just to get it into Walmart. Like that was a conversation we had back in the Postal 2 days. And it was like, do we want to do that? Fuck no.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Moonlight Game Devs, the podcast where game developers share the story behind their latest games and the lessons learned with their fellow developers. Today I had a chat with Mike Jaret from Running with Scissors, the company that is known for the infamous and controversial Postal series. Mike shared how he started working on the game series and a lot of the lessons learned from this current project. I hope you guys enjoy and learn a lot from the upcoming episode. What's up, Mike? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're one of the owners of Running with Scissors, the company responsible for the infamous Postal series. But maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about kind of your background, I guess, and how you got started.
I went to high school with Vince Desi's son, and we were in a computer class together. And this kid in our class used to always talk about how his dad owned a video game company, but like this kid didn't know anything about computers. So it was like, stop lying to us, bro. And one day he asked if I could give him a ride to his dad's office. And I was like, oh yeah, let's see this thing. And I went to the office and I met his dad and I was wrong. And turns out he did own a video game company. And then like a little over 2.5 years later, maybe 3 years, I was working with the company. So.
Can you tell us a little bit like that process? Did you kind of get into like the programming side or design side? Like
no. I'm all on business. I do handle audio recording, voiceover stuff, and I do help with the design. But I am an artist. I am a musician, but right. I can't draw stick figures. So not on the art side. I took a programming class in college, realized in about 5 minutes that this is not for me. I'm a pretty results-oriented person, and programming requires a lot of work to get any results. So it really wasn't for me. But I was always a sales guy and a business guy, so it was just a natural fit. Plus, I'm like a foul-mouthed asshole, and Vince is the same way. And we kind of just reconnected when I was not in high school anymore, and he realized that I'm like a young version of him. So he brought me in, and I helped him out with marketing for a few years, and transformed into the do-it-all kind of person. So kind of how we operate here.
Yeah. So you guys, this company that you're working on and building is, like we already said, talked about, known for Postal. I guess you could say in many ways kind of a controversial game. But like when you get started, for example, like one thing and I found quite interesting about Postal 2 actually is banned here where I am right now in Germany. I don't know if you knew that.
Correct. Yeah. Well, banned is the wrong word. It's indexed.
Okay. What's the difference there?
Which is essentially banned. Like you are allowed to own it,
right?
But it can't be for sale. So it's kind of that happened to us, I think, sometime around 2004. And we put the game up on Steam in 2012, and it was doing really, really well in Germany. And I think it was up for like 2 years or 2.5 years. And then the German government decided that this like blanket indexing of a bunch of games back in 2004 was enough reason to get all these games pulled off of Steam. So they had Postal 2, Postal 1, Vampire Masquerade, like a bunch of these games that were all banned back in 2004 were just like kind of rebanned again.
Right.
And not great.
Yeah.
Because it is definitely one of our top countries in the world.
Yeah, a lot of gamers here. Or like Steam.
I mean, really, Germany is top 3 for
sure.
Postal games. So
yeah, that's kind of ironic. Yeah.
It's pretty important, and we did try to get the Postal 2 ban reversed. We actually had like a legal team working on it. Legal teams might be the wrong word. We had a legal person working on it, and it was rejected. So
yeah,
I think indexing lasts for 25 years, something like that. So maybe in 2029, Postal 2 will be back on Steam. But I don't know. I mean, Postal 4 is still available, so we're kind of hoping that annoyance still doesn't exist anymore. Or they just haven't gotten to it yet. So
Yeah, maybe they've not taken too much of a look at it. I mean, I think that things have changed a little bit since then because I know that a lot of
Yeah.
games got censored, and it was a when kind of I think an era where video games were seen in a lot more critical light. I guess they're a lot more normalized now.
Yeah.
But
Well, we have no problem submitting it for review. We just can't submit Postal 4 until it's done. So once the
right,
game is done, we can submit it to the what is it called? The US
SKA, USK, I think it's what it's
USK.
called.
That's what it is.
Or
Yeah, we can submit it to the USK for classification.
right.
We're down. We're totally down. You can't do it while you're in early access. They don't have a methodology for that.
Are you guys like a little bit wary of that? Like considering you notice that Germany has a lot of sales. Have you guys maybe considered? I know that some games back in those days when these bannings happened, they also maybe censored their games. I don't know if that's still something that happens a lot in Germany outside of
I
certain
think it's more of a
symbols.
China thing now.
Right? Yeah.
um,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things where if you do it, you risk not selling anything because people don't want to play censored shit. But
Mm,
I mean, it really comes down to what they would want. I mean, yeah, back in the day, it was change your blood to green, and you could be out in Germany. So I mean, I don't know what will happen. From what we've been told, they're approving just about every game now. I mean, all the Doom
yeah.
games are approved, and those are fucking violent. So
Mm,
I guess we'll have to see. I mean, unfortunately, our violence isn't our only issue. We also have a 20 plus year history of, sort of false notoriety. Like we did make the very first game where you could kill innocent bystanders. So it's just kind of, there's nothing you can do except not call it Postal anymore, which we're probably not going to do.
yeah.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Speaking of, the name, the IP, Postal. When you were developing your games, I want to talk like a little bit about kind of that brand and what kind of in your eyes
Mhm.
makes a Postal game and how you kind of build on those brands as a developer.
I mean, it's really funny because while we have our lead designer, his name's Ricky, he's sort of the Postal Bible. He knows everything. And he tries to keep stuff relatively in line with things we've done in the past. The truth is, like, we just like to make shit that we laugh at. Like, we don't give a fuck about continuity. We don't give a fuck about realism. We don't give a fuck about like being vulgar for vulgar's sake. Like, we just throw shit at the wall, and if we laugh at it, put it in the game. Why not? I mean, yeah, we will take some things that have worked in the past, like having the dude going around asking for something, whether it's a job or money or whatever it is, right? That
Yeah.
happens to be funny. We just turned it into something funnier, and we said he'd suck people's dicks for work. So um, it, it's kind of hard. We're a completely remote team. We don't have an
Okay.
office anywhere. And we do have multiple meetings a week, and we do have design meetings, and it really is like let Ricky design this sort of like rough landscape of what we're going to do, and then we kind of all just throw in ideas as we go. So um, obviously if you've been playing Postal 4, you'll see that the Tuesday update that we released last week is like a lot more Postal 2 than Monday was. Monday was kind of like really bare bones. It just had a couple of missions that were just some platforming and a little bit of combat, but not much. And Tuesday has a lot more combat and a lot more wacky, zany shit that we really like. So, um, we expanded our team like big time after early access came out. We went from 15 people to about 30. So we have a
Mm,
lot of people working on this now, and we have a lot of minds in there and a lot of like top quality talent. So things are only looking up.
that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Mm. I guess what I kind of noticed was, looking at the history of Postal as well is how many games it's presumably two, three, and now four as well. It's like how long you've been working on the company, right? Or
Yeah, I started like when Postal 2 was just being started, maybe a couple months in.
right. Yeah, like
I'm
I
here for
noticed.
Postal 2, Apocalypse Weekend, Share the Pain, then Postal 3. Then eventually Paradise Lost, Postal Redux. the movie,
Yeah,
um,
it existed.
and now Postal 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I noticed that you guys actually changed Postal, like the gameplay quite a lot over those years. Like,
Yeah.
you went through different, points of view and experimented with different things. And now it
Mhm.
seems like you guys are going back to kind of the Postal 2 style. What kind of made you guys go for that design decision?
Well, we now have call it 8 years of actual worldwide distribution of Postal games on Steam, and it allows us to see what like obviously works and what doesn't.
Mhm.
Um, Postal 1, it's infamous, but it's not ever sold amazingly. It sells fine. Postal 2 continues daily to this day to sell amazingly well. Its add-on Paradise Lost sells pretty fucking good. We remade Postal 1 with Postal Redux, and it's a really good game, but nobody's buying it. I mean, I'm not going to say nobody, but it's not done well. So pretty obvious to us that the ISO views didn't really attract much as far as on the PC market anyway. Postal 3, it's a really bad example because the game sucks, but um, it just when it was time to make the next game, what we actually were gunning to do was to remake Postal 2. I mean, we remade Postal 1 and it was like, well, that was a fucking tactical error. Like nobody played it when it was Postal 1. Why would they play it now? We should have just remade Postal 2. So we originally started Postal 4 as a redux of Postal 2. I mean, it was going to be called Postal 2x2, and we got a little bit into development before we realized like this is a lot of work. We should just make the next game and use this as a framework and make it basically the spiritual successor to Postal 2, because obviously Postal 3 doesn't really exist. It is
Mhm.
a blip in time, a large blip in time, and clearly Postal 2 is our most popular game, so we might as well build on that. You can take that a million different ways. I mean, GTA 3, 4, 5 have all been like virtually identical games
Yeah.
with new mechanics, better graphics, yada yada yada. It's like we don't need to be like a annual reskin like a NFL game, but at least we can use what works. And clearly what works is the Postal 2 style, which while a lot of people buy it today, it's still really old and you can't put it on consoles because it's it's just not possible. So the idea was to get Postal 2 running on Unreal 4. So instead of it being an upgrade of 2, it's a new game.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of your um, process there of evolving the game in early access. I know you're doing pretty frequent app updates,
Mm-hmm.
especially right now. Like, when did you guys sort of realize or feel like the game was ready to launch? Was there a certain criteria that you felt wouldn't be needed to meet, or?
The truth is, we launched it when it wasn't ready to launch. So there's not really a good answer for that. Yeah, it's it's hard to say because we put it out in what you would consider to be a very early janky state. And it was more, we just had been working on it for a certain period of time and it needed to be out there. We were putting it out for multiple reasons. One, we obviously needed development funds. We're an indie developer. We don't have a publisher. We
Mhm.
spend every dollar we make off of Steam on our games. And it just got to a breaking point where like we have to monetize. Number one. Number two, there was only so many of us and we needed to expand. So um, putting it out on early access obviously allowed us to do that by making money on the product and hiring more people, not to mention um, putting it out there that you're working on it. And once you put it out there that you're working on it, more people want to work on it. So,
Yeah, that's true.
we had a lot of reasons to put it up when we did, despite the fact that it was a huge risk. And we definitely were not um, too sure how it would go over. But it definitely went over well. And part of what, the whole methodology behind what we're doing is that we're using early access as sort of a way to give people episodic gameplay. Whereas most early access games are giving you basically a beta of a game, maybe an alpha, but a full game, maybe, but in a really shitty state. And then you kind of hope that over time it gets better. And sometimes you end up waiting years. Sometimes you end up waiting many years and you never actually get to the end. Whereas our plan was 5 days in the week, release the first day to start, fix up the first day, hire more people, work on the second day, release the second day, and kind of just go that way throughout everything. And it seems to have worked pretty well. I mean, people are super happy with Tuesday. It did take a little longer than we wanted to. It took about 10 months to get to that. But it's not going to take that long going forward. I mean, we weren't working on Tuesday for 10 months. We were fixing the worst jank and expanding the team and updating art for a good 6 months. So Wednesday should be out before the end of the year with a little luck. So
yeah, that's an interesting approach. I mean, I think that's something like kind of an old school thing that a lot of early access games used to do. They used to go very early.
Right.
Nowadays, I feel like the benefit I think you guys have as well is kind of the IP as well. Like people know Postal, they're willing to support the game early on.
That's we got a lot of reviews on Steam that basically say game doesn't run on my machine, can't even boot it, 10 out of 10. I trust running with scissors. And we're like, great, because I mean, we're not going to sleep. I mean, we'll definitely sleep, but we're not going to quit until this motherfucker is done. And awesome. It's going to get done because we have a lot of plans for it. You know, we need a game on console. We've needed a game on PlayStation and Xbox, and maybe even Switch. Fuck, I don't know. And you know, we've got a lot of stories to tell. So once this game is done and we have all that framework, like it allows us to do a lot. You know, we could have done a lot more with Postal 2, but back in the day, we just didn't have the availability. We didn't have the funding, which is kind of why we went with the Russian route with Postal 3. But that's not going to happen this time. You know, we're going to be putting out a lot of content for this game for the foreseeable future, including probably Postal 5. But let's finish 4 before we talk about that, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, you mentioned there that you're trying to kind of scale the company, hiring people really quickly as you're rapidly developing the game. Yeah, tell me a little bit about kind of the thought process behind that and how you guys have approached that.
Well, so historically, I mean, historically meaning back to when we got on Steam, which is 2012. You know, we had a small team of guys that had been modders with the company for a long time. I mean, John Merchant, who's our partner, he was one of the guys that made Eternal Damnation. One of our main programmers, Rick Holtz, went by Kamek. He was like the programmer that made the Week in Paradise mod and Airmail mod. Like these were just like very well-known modders for Postal 2, and they were doing a lot of side work for us. And so we started putting together our team with just hardcore fans, and it kind of kept going that way. Like our lead designer, Ricky, we got from the Face Punch forums back when we got on Steam, which was like a huge supporter of ours. And it kind of just blew up from there. I mean, Paradise Lost and Postal Redux were completely made by fans, but fans that now worked for us. And that's how Postal 4's development started too. And kind of our whole way has been, you know, we didn't really put out feelers for job applicants. You know, we just were you know, hitting up people that were hitting us up. And obviously we had to put out ads for Postal 4. Like we just needed more applicants because, you know, the pool of people that have next gen skills runs out when you're only dealing with Postal 2 modders. But what we have mostly done is people we've hired are almost all diehard fans. They weren't necessarily modders, but they do know a lot about the brand. They do know a lot about the product. And so while they may not be modders for the game, they are still working on one of their favorite games. So we like to keep it that way as much as possible. I mean, obviously we've hired some good talent that wasn't overly familiar with us before, and it works out too. But we're like, we like to consider Running with Scissors more of a club as opposed to a company. So it's it's good to keep it like with fans. They want more for the product than somebody that's just getting paid does.
I think that's an interesting way of actually, building a culture kind of as well, because
Mm-hmm.
fans of like Postal are probably going to have a similar sense of humor, for example, which I
Right.
think is important in a company as well.
Like
Uh,
our 2D artist, we have him like drawing dicks like every day. And, if he wasn't a Postal fan, I'm not sure he'd be okay with that. But because he is, he's like, okay, drawing more dicks today. Like, that's right.
Awesome. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you're having a remote company. How long
Yeah.
has that, been for you guys, and how was the transition there?
The
Um,
last time we actually had an office was 2009.
mhm.
Uh, after Postal 3 was kind of like falling apart, we had a team of guys in the same building that I'm still in today. And there was about 4 or 5 of us there. And we were working on some other project that never came out. Then we disbanded that team back then. And um, wasn't really until 2012 when we had the team sort of put back together, but it was all remote. It was John in the UK and Rick in Texas and various guys around the world in the United States. So we've kind of always rolled that way. I mean, everything we've done since we got on Steam. I mean, even when when we were finishing Postal 3, I mean, we didn't have a team. But Kella did. That piece of shit got put together by them. So we've been remote for I don't know 9 years now, and it's not always been the easiest thing, but we have learned, and we're only getting better at it every day. And now everybody's forced to do it, so the
Yeah.
tools to do it are only getting better. It's like people that have gluten intolerances benefit far from fad diet people that don't want to eat gluten, because then there's more options, right? So when everybody needs to work remote, the remote work tools just get better, right? So it sort of helps us out, but it is funny to us that, we hear these stories of game companies having a lot of trouble,
Hmm.
and we're like, yeah, we get it, but we also laugh because, yeah, we get it, right? Like,
Yeah.
we know. And it is sometimes hard for new people that aren't used to that work environment, but then they very quickly realize that, not having to spend X amount of time a day to get ready to go to an office and drive there and drive home and be sitting around people all the time is not necessarily the best thing for everybody. I mean, there is some element that is missing. I mean, I do miss being able to just walk 20 feet and go sit with the developers and talk about things. But if we need to set up a Google Meet, we set it up. It's not that big of a deal. It's just not the same as having a whiteboard right there that you can write on and being able to yell ideas back into the bullpen. But it's, quite frankly, if we put together an office right now, I'm not sure most of our guys would even want to come in. Like, you kind of get used to your workflow being at home. I mean, really, like, I go to an office every day, and it's a process.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, when we had an office of guys, it's not like they really talk to each other that much anyway.
Yeah.
you know, they have their head down and they're working, and that's why it seems to work so well. I think for us is that they just want to do the work.
Yeah. I think that what you said there is like so true. For example, the onboarding process, I think for new people gets a lot harder when you can't just walk up to someone and ask a person who's experienced in
Yep.
coding, for example. That's kind of where I work. That it's difficult because as a new guy, you don't know things too well, how they work, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess there are solutions, like you said, with nowadays the tools
Yeah,
getting
but
better and
think
better.
about the that is tough. The onboarding is tough, but
Mhm.
the cost of hiring new talent is way down because you don't have to move anybody out. You don't have
Yeah.
to assume living costs while somebody's finding places to live and stay. And, then they have what's it called? Like an adaptation time while they're learning to live in that city. And, there's a lot more to, I mean, we don't, like I said, we don't live in Silicon Valley. We're not in Austin. We're in fucking Tucson, Arizona. It's not like Tucson is bustling with game development.
No.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
we're not again, like if we hire somebody and they're like, you know what, I really want to move to Tucson, like we'll figure it out. I mean, this office isn't really big enough, but we don't have a problem with people that want to do it. It just isn't really how we're doing it right now, and especially with the virus. So,
Yeah. I just want to get like a little bit of an idea of kind of your day to day right now. Like, can you explain what you do in a day and some of your main sort of roles and
yeah, I
activities?
mean, I kind of handle a good portion of the business side. Like, I'll wake up sometime between 7 and 8 o'clock. I will immediately start checking my Google chat for all of our various threads for the company, go over whatever. Because since we're so remote, I mean, half my team's in the States, half my team is anywhere else. I mean, we have people in Japan, we have people in the Philippines, we have people in Ecuador, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, and the UK. Um, so there's always somebody on doing something. So there's always a lot to read in the morning and sort of catch up on. Then I'll usually go and check our project management stuff to see what's updated over the night, see what needs comment. Sometimes play test in the morning, depending on what there is to do. Then by about 9, I'll shower, get ready, go to the office. So by about 10 or 10:30, I work on the orders for the store. I handle all the orders for the store here personally. And it really just depends on where we are in a certain milestone. I mean, earlier in the milestone, there's less play testing. Later in the milestone, there's obviously a ton of it. So depending on where we're at is the amount of actual work I have to do. And then obviously there's times where I have to do a bunch of audio recording or handling other people that do it. You know, like a lot of people can record at home now, so I'm just sending audio back and forth. But yeah, while my actual hours on vary, I'm kind of always on. Does that make sense? Like
Totally.
my
Yeah.
phone is at my hip at all hours because while I am not the 5 alarm fire person for development, I'm also, I kind of need to be available for everybody all the time. So,
Yeah. Making decisions, I suppose, and
right,
things like
like
that.
in our project management software, I don't ever really clock out. I mean, I turn my timer off, but it still says you can contact me if you need to. So,
Right. Makes sense. Finally, I want to kind of touch upon your decision to not go for publishing. Is that can you explain a little bit about the thought process there behind that?
I don't have to tell you any thought process, man. We tried to sell this game for a while.
Right. Okay.
It's not our decision. We would,
Mhm.
while we are indie and we enjoy the space, we would absolutely love to have a publisher that gets it and
Mhm.
wants to put their fucking weight behind it. Because, yeah, I mean, it's fun to do these early access products and be culty and say that we haven't, dealt with that. But, there's a big difference between how many units you can do if you have a fucking publishing arm with a marketing department and money to spend,
Yeah.
blasting this into people's faces. I mean, companies don't spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing because it doesn't work. We don't spend really anything on it. So we are still working on a, viral word of mouth process, which is great. But like, even if you have a couple 100,000 units out on Steam or even more than that in wish lists, like there's millions of people to buy this game, right? Like we've
Mhm.
sold more than 3 million copies of Postal 2. Now, mind you, a lot of those are at $1, but those are still potential customers, and not all of them know we have a game out, despite the fact that Steam keeps telling them that there's an update. Like they just don't all see it. They need to see it multiple times in multiple areas, and obviously that's not something we can really do without the help of somebody big that has money to do it. So in the grand scheme, we would definitely like to work with a publisher. It's just finding the right one that has the balls and wants to deal with the potential backlash if there is one, right? I mean, I think we've kind of proved everybody wrong. Like, we've had virtually no backlash with this game. We've had nothing but support from most of the fans, and that's just the way it is. I mean, this game is going to get a console release, and I'd rather not do that alone.
Yeah, that's interesting and great to hear. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Honestly,
we're toxic. we're this brand is somehow considered toxic with publishers. Everybody wants it except one person, and one person tends to make decisions, and most companies are relatively risk averse, which is pretty fucked up when you end up with a company telling you like, oh yeah, we don't think that'll fit in our library. And I'm like, but what about this game and this game and this game that are equally as violent? It's like, well, that's not Postal. And it's like, okay, you're wrong. You're right, but you're wrong, right? Like, that game is a little more violent than ours. Ours is funny. Yours is not. Your game tells you to kill people. Ours does not. So, like, I mean, I guess.
Yeah. I can imagine that being challenging to negotiate. Like, if you have that brand as well.
Right. Like, we want a publisher. We're not going to. Like I already told you, we're not like jumping on the fact of censoring the game to put it out in Germany. We're not jumping on censoring the game so that we can have a publisher, because then they will have an equal hard time selling the game as well. And we're not making the game we want to make. I mean, obviously there are concessions we will make, right? Like, yes, of course, if there is one sticking point that's not that big of a deal to us. I mean, if they tell us like, take the pissing out, well, no, it's core function of the game. But if they say like, you should probably leave this out and this, I'm like, okay, maybe we'll talk about it. What can we replace this with that's funnier and not that big of a deal? I mean, we're not that like locked into everything we do. Like, there's always room for modification. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it also doesn't make sense to really take away kind of like the Postal DNA there, especially when it is what brings in the fans, which, like you said, is your word of mouth kind of effect there.
And as I said in the past, like, we make games that we laugh at.
Yeah.
So it just has to be funny to us. It doesn't matter if it's like not exactly what we planned, as long as it's still funny. I mean, I remember distinctly having the conversation about changing the pissing to like a water bottle and spraying water just to get it into Walmart. Like, that was a conversation we had back in the Postal 2 days. And it was like, do we want to do that? Fuck no. If Walmart will buy 1 million copies, like, we may talk about it, right? But this was before it was a big thing. And at this point, it's like, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, is that really why you're not going to sell the game? I don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's ultimately, I think, what sold it to a lot of customers, right? The pissing.
I mean, we got to be unique, right? Like, there's 1 million fucking crazy shooters out there. I mean, there's not a lot of games that is like Postal. There really isn't. Like, we're open world. There's open world shooters. Yeah, there's GTA clones. We're not really a GTA clone. You know, like, we are a small company working on an open world title, which does not happen. And it's not a good idea. I don't recommend other small companies work on open world games. It's very complicated. And there's a reason why Rockstar spends $300+ million on this. It's fucking hard. So that's kind of what makes us unique.
Is this something that you can like share a little bit about, like some of the challenges you guys had building that open world, or is it something that, you know, you're not, as a business guy, not that much familiar
I mean, I'm not like overly in tune with it, other than there's a reason. Like, yeah, they're using their own engine, but, you know, they could take Unreal and make it do what they want to do because they have unlimited funds. If you can throw 250 programmers at something, they can figure it out. I don't have 10 programmers. So we're using out of the box Unreal tools. And while it does have level streaming abilities, for the most part, the engine really is geared towards, you know, smaller environments, less variety in things, more of a hallway type of game. Not necessarily a hallway like in the classic sense, but
I know what you mean.
Games that appear very beautiful and open are really not that open. Like, Jedi Fallen Order is not an open world game. I mean, it feels a little bit open, but it's mostly just very beautiful hallways, right? we have a literal sandbox, and it's a lot of trial and error. And without legions of programmers and artists, it's fucking hard. Really, really, really hard, because every little thing we do is super expensive when it comes to frames and draw calls, and it's rough. We're getting it done, but it's rough.
Yeah, I think also like the making it actually feel alive and feel like a world, like where there's stuff going on. That's also one of the things that I think is such a big challenge as well. Like a lot of developers fail. There's not enough stuff to do.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
So finally, I just kind of want to ask a few questions about like hot seat questions.
Sure.
So first is what motivates you to work on your game every day?
I mean, I've been doing it so long at this point that the brand is sort of embedded in my brain. And since I am also the front face of the company for the most part, I mean, Vince is still here doing a lot, but historically it was only Vince, and now it's very much myself. It is very important for me to be out there on the front lines, making sure everybody, customers, not customers, random people on Twitter, random people on Facebook, know what we're doing and know that we're here and know that we're continuing to do this shit.
Yeah. If there would be another, like, say, for example, your dream game, you could make any game, what would that be? Would that be another Postal game, or would that be something else?
I don't actually have an answer to that question. Really, the only games I personally play, like in excess, are GTA style games. Really, like I historically, I was a Counter-Strike player and used to play a lot of NHL and GoldenEye. I mean, we're going way back, but like in the last 10 years, like Grand Theft Auto games, Red Dead Redemption, Red Dead Revolver. I'm playing Watch Dogs 2 right now.
Right.
You know, I played Death Stranding. You know, these are my style of games. So I'm not sure my dream game would be much different from what I'm doing. I just might have a bigger budget, a bigger team, and you know, maybe our own engine, and have an actual like marketing and publishing arm behind it.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
What is the best game development or business advice you ever received?
Stay true to yourself. I mean, you can have all the money and power, but if you're not doing something you like, it's fucking, it's just mind numbing. I mean, I have a lot of friends that do really well, but they like all just can't believe how much fun I have and how much freedom I have and how, like, you know, look, we've had tough years. We've had plenty of years where we just don't make any money. We have to pay for development, and like we give all of our developers money before we take it. So like, yeah, there's rough years, but you know, you can have rough years doing anything, but I would never give up my freedom and fun for a better paycheck. So try to find something you love before you just go for the big paycheck.
I think that's great advice. So thanks so much for having this chat here with me, Mike. Is there any place you want to share and you know, people can look up?
Yeah, I mean, we're same as it ever was. GoPostal.com, runningwithscissors.com. All of our games are for sale on Steam, on GOG. You can buy them directly from us, so we get all the money at postalgames.com. You can get that through our regular website too. Follow our Twitch, which is RWS Studios, our Twitter, which is RWS Bleeder, and we have the I Regret Nothing podcast. If you haven't listened to it, you should check it out. It's runningwithscissors.com/podcast.
Awesome.
You can subscribe on all your favorite podcast device.
A little bit of cross-podcast promotion there. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing or leaving a review. And if you want to get more game development content, head down to the website, moonlightgamedevs.com. Consider subscribing to our newsletter or joining this discussion on Discord. Thanks, and I'll catch you for the next episode.